start the recording. Okay.
So it is December 4th. It is roughly 9:31 a.m. and we are calling to order the Weston Public Schools Curriculum Committee meeting. The first order of business is approval of our November 2024 meeting minutes.
I move that the Curriculum Committee approve the November meeting minutes.
All right, I will second that. So all in favor, Lisa and I probably.
Mhm.
All right, so our next order of business is, hang on a moment. Wait a minute. Tina, sorry, I'm still learning my new position here. When do we normally go over the norms and stuff like that? Do I do that? Do you do that?
You did a great job last time. You could just talk about the purpose and go right into the norms. So you can take the lead for sure.
Okay. So if you would bring those up, perfect. Okay. So just as a quick reminder for the curriculum committee, our virtual norms are keep your camera on at all times, mute your microphone just so we don't have background noise when you're not speaking, be present and engaged. We want to hear from you, seek to understand, and we'll keep the discussion and comments on topic so that we can get our educators and administrators back to their other job after this meeting. So, did I do okay?
Excellent.
Thank you. All right. So I will turn over to you now, Tina.
Great. So for those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time, we always talk about the purpose of this subcommittee meeting, which is to focus on topics that we're going to be focusing on in the district, at the district level or school level. And we want to be able to collaborate some of those action steps and those goals with our Board of Education stakeholders, and also between district level support and school-based leadership. And we want to be able to discuss all aspects of curriculum instruction, school culture, and climate within the district. So we're excited today to have a really full and robust conversation about a lot of great work that's happening out in the district. And I'm going to start with our first request, which is the overnight field trip request. Just to give you some background, Lisa, also part of some of our role, or your role and responsibility in this subcommittee, is to review and be the first level of approval for overnight field trips that teachers are requesting for students to participate in, as well as any international overnight field trip requests. When they pop up in my office, the documentation gets shared here first. We review the documentation, make sure all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted first. And then we have the individual, like the lead chaperone, I guess you could say, come to the meeting and talk about what the purpose of the field trip is, what's the alignment to curriculum as an enhancement experience for students. And so this is probably the first one of the year, I think, that has come before this board, if I remember correctly. But we have Jennifer Klein is with us today. I think
I'm here. Yep.
Hi, Jen.
Hi there.
Great to see you. She is, I guess, the lead chaperone around this trip. And so I asked her to come speak briefly about the request to take a group of students on an overnight trip to Washington, D.C. It is in April. It's extending over a long weekend, right, Jen? It goes from Thursday. They're going to leave Thursday afternoon and then return on Sunday. And so we just wanted Jennifer to come and speak a little bit about like why she's requesting the field trip and how it's aligned to the curriculum and the course that she really values and is requesting this. Once it gets approved here, Lisa, just so you know, it then goes to the full board on the December full board agenda, and the full board formally approves the overnight request. So okay. Jennifer, I'm going to give it to you to give a brief overview. And just so you know, the documents that you submitted to my office for the official review have been included in the board book items, so they can actually see Good. Some of the components that you requested.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to first say that this is a request for a class called Facing History in Ourselves, which sometimes has a confusing name and people don't know, well, what actually is that? And so Facing History in Ourselves is an in-depth study of the Holocaust, and it's called Facing History in Ourselves because there's an organization called Facing History in Ourselves that teaches a historical and sociological approach to studying tough topics. And so we're using this approach to study the Holocaust over the whole semester. And so two particular topics that we look at towards the end of the semester are going to be addressed on this field trip. So one thing, when we're looking at the Holocaust, we spend a lot of time looking at resistance, looking at Jewish resistance, both spiritual and physical, and then looking at non-Jewish resistance. In our class, we call those people upstanders as opposed to being bystanders. And so at the Holocaust Museum, there's a lot of information there. I went in September to try and plot out this field trip. And I'm glad I went, because I got bogged down in the first 2 floors. And I realized that I really want the kids to spend much of their time on the 3rd floor, where they'll get to that section on resistance. And so that's the purpose for going there, and also to look at how is the United States telling this story of the Holocaust. So that's our focus there. And then on the second full day, we're going to spend some time at the African American Museum and Cultural Center. And again, when I was there, I got totally bogged down. It is an amazing and a huge museum, so I was able to see where I want the kids to focus. And so they'll also be looking at resistance there, and looking at cultural and spiritual resistance as part of the African American experience. So looking at the same topic, but looking at, which is resistance, but looking at it applied to a different group. And so that's in our 3rd unit, we look at resistance. And then in our 4th unit, which is called Justice and Reconciliation, which looks at how do you make sense of terrible things that happen. And so one thing that we look at in the class is we look at different Holocaust monuments and memorials, and we have a whole process of analyzing them. And so I, as part of this trip, on the first full day at night, I've arranged to have, or I will arrange to have, a tour. It's a Monuments by Moonlight tour. And I took it when I was down there in September. And so we would visit a variety of monuments that we wouldn't necessarily be able to easily access by walking on the mall. And the kids will use the same ways of analyzing these monuments that they did with Holocaust monuments, and to try and understand, who is the audience for these monuments? What's the purpose? What's the context when they were built? And so that's really the rationale of the course, or of the field trip. I was really fortunate the last 2 summers to get fully funded trips. I went to Israel, and I studied Holocaust education there in the summer of 2023. And then I was in Poland in the summer of 2024. And this is partly my way of paying forward to the people that funded my travel. In addition to benefiting my, of course, the Weston students, but really to pay forward this education that I was able to have.
It sounds absolutely fabulous. It sounds like a really wonderful trip. And if you ever want to reach out, my in-laws both survived Auschwitz.
Oh.
And I'm sure that I could get my husband to speak on many of the topics that you just raised in your classroom as a child of a survivor.
That's wonderful, Lisa. I will definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Wow.
I have just one quick question. Is there a debrief afterwards to get feedback from students to see how you,
Yes, so absolutely.
At the Holocaust Research Center.
Depending on the particular, depending on the ideally, maybe if there's a public space in the hotel, or a public space outside in the mall. I mean, my initial thing with this class, because we do discuss tough things, is that we don't talk first. They write and they reflect, and then I ask them to share. So yes, there will definitely be, more immediate debriefs, soon after the experience, and then when we get back into the classroom. And not all students from the class will go on this trip. So I'll have to find some kind of, won't be the same, but some kind of similar digital experience that they might be able to get.
Yeah, it's a good point, David. I think what we can do, Jen, maybe we can discuss it after. This might be a great avenue for kids. And I know Shauna and Alex are going to be talking about their interdisciplinary project that they just experienced, and with the high school students and the intermediate school students. But this could be an avenue for some of our students to come and actually talk about their experience in this subcommittee meeting as well. So maybe we could do a follow-up after you guys return, maybe with 1 or 2 volunteers with kids who might want to join us and talk about their experience and what they learned and if it was beneficial. Because Jennifer, she didn't toot her horn enough. She has spent a considerable amount of time really investigating and researching different experiences that would really elevate this course specifically. And she has really dove into a variety of different experiences and was very meticulous and mindful and purposeful on why she chose this one. So thank you for doing all that extra work, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Lisa, I think you were just
Yeah,
talking.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, got it. On the form, it said 20 of 25 students would probably be attending. And I can understand some students not wanting to go. And with that said, we have 150 families who, need support for, food support. Is there an avenue for students who can afford the trip to be able to afford it, raising money, Kiwanis, and other possible supports for students who might have issues?
Right.
I'll take that one real quick, just because that's a district policy with any of our field trips
Okay.
for overnight or international. We do have we do have options for students that need support in these areas. And there is a process within our field trip request documentation to families if they do need support to reach out to the principal and we can help support. Yes.
Perfect, Tina. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions for Jennifer? Amazing. Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I can't wait to kind of follow up with you afterwards, and maybe we could schedule something for May when they return.
Okay. Thank you. I got to go teach my government class.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming. All right. Great. So that moves us to the next agenda item. I just stopped sharing for a moment. Now I got to go back. Which are some curriculum updates. Am I sharing? Yes, they are. Real quick, just want to remind you all of some of the updates that we've been working on out in the field. We had a really great presentation with Max Stossel. He is the gentleman who is the founder of Social Awakening, focusing on how social media is impacting our lives. He came and did an interactive presentation with our secondary students in grades 7 through 12 at the high school on the 21st. He spent an hour talking about how these phones and these apps are designed to entice and make sure that you get addicted to the phone, and they're designed intentionally for that purpose. And so we really wanted to educate our students around some of those apps and what they and how they're designed and how they've even gotten more. Enticing is not the word, because sometimes it's even more dark than it's addictive. It's dark. There's some really scary avenues that kids can go down into if they're not careful. So I felt like the feedback, and maybe Dan or Megan can add in anything as necessary, but I think as I went to lunch with Max, and then I talked to kids after those sessions on that day. And I think a lot of them, the middle school group was very chatty, I think, but they were very chatty about the topic, which was good, right? And the fact that they were really, it was resonating with them while they were chatty. It was really resonating with them because I think there were some pieces of the applications that Max was talking about that they were probably not aware of. And I wasn't able to attend the high school session, but some of the feedback during lunch too was that it really helped re-clarify some of the educational components of these apps and these tools, and just making sure that we're more mindful of our use and how, if we are not careful, we can easily remove ourselves from the real world if we're not careful. So that was very good with the students. And then at night, we had a parent presentation where he did a slightly different presentation for parents, talked about strategies, talked about different applications and how they influence their kids, and some of the darkness of some of these apps if we're not careful. For me as a parent too, having heard him now twice from a parent perspective, it really elevated my language to have educated conversations with my kids, because unless you understand some of the lingo with the kids, sometimes it's hard to have a conversation because they think you don't know what's happening on the apps. And now I had an elevated level of language and vocabulary where I actually do know what's happening. And so it was always a helpful presentation for me as a parent too, to come back and have further conversations about monitoring and strategies, and like, let's look at your usage. Let's look at the different apps and understand what this is doing and monitoring for kids. We did send out an email, the principals in their week ahead, just as a quick update, to families for a recorded link of the parent presentation if they weren't able to attend. The parent presentation is a pre-recorded presentation of Max, explaining a lot of the same components and research that he gave during the in-person presentation, but there's no dialogue, obviously. So there was definitely a robust conversation with parents asking questions of him and asking for some ideas or strategies within particular situations that they had at home, which was very beneficial. And we got a lot of emails afterwards from parents really thanking us for providing a session like this that was very explicit with strategies and having some open dialogue in a trusting environment to talk about some of the woes of what they're going through at home. And even with kids of other families, when they invite them over to the house, and how can they monitor and manage some of the use of these phones, even when they're with other children as well. So we've sent that out. Mm-hmm.
Tina, I thought it was great. I think bringing him in as an outside consultant to talk to the students makes a real difference. It's not administration or teachers telling them, it's a real discussion. I thought that was great. I didn't see the parents. I saw the webinar. It was really, really good. And I just wanted to extend the conversation. I think it's perfect. I think it's the aha moment. This is different, where, our world is changing so quickly and so fast. How do we change our curriculum and education in order to support the students? I found one thing that Max Stossel said that was really interesting was because of the use of smartphones, not the flip phone, but the smartphone, we need a different curriculum in sex education because of the of what students are seeing on the phones. And I was wondering if, a parent had talked to me about the fact that they would like to see the sex education curriculum revamped, starting younger, especially because of what students are visualizing, and even an updated curriculum because, how do we navigate the pictures that we're seeing and what's real and what's okay and what's not?
Oh yeah, agreed. I think what he honed in on was that body image and that self perception component of some of these apps, and knowing what's digitally kind of manipulated versus what's real. We do developmentally, we look at some of those standards developmentally, in our health curriculum. And the health curriculum is in the process of being revised because the standards have been updated within the last 2 years. So it's definitely allowing us to reflect as well when we're hearing some of these topics and knowing what these kids are seeing on some of these apps, especially, as you know, what he said was like through YouTube. right? How YouTube can really force kids into some dark areas of the internet that parents really need to be aware of and monitor when they're on it and what they're doing, and ask those important questions to say, let me see, right? Let me see what you're doing. And the more we can do that, I think, the more we can help our kids, because I think the other messaging too, and I don't know if those of you that were parents and listened to him as well, felt that, he really wanted to hone in on the fact that this was about education and not being punitive, where if a student or a kid is going down a really, slippery area, dark area, that we are able to say, this is not about being punitive. Like, tell me what's happening. Tell me how you're feeling after you're using this app or what you're seeing, and trying to be more open so that there's a dialogue around the different tools that these kids are using, so that parents and kids are not seen as like afraid to have those conversations. That was also a really big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
And I think the parents as well. I don't know, David, if anybody else wants to add anything, I just wanted to give an update. I know there's been a lot of emails, and week ahead's been out from all of our principals the past since November 21st. So just wanted to let you know that we got some really great feedback on his presentation.
I was just going to say, I think it's something that's really top of mind for everybody in the district. So it's really timely. And I think if we can continue these types of programs, it just helps set expectations, right? Because I would imagine, I was going to ask Dan this question with Yonder bags. I'll jump and I'll just ask the question. I would imagine during the school day, there's less of that desire to be checking your phone, because if you know your friends aren't on their phones, you haven't really missed much. So if you want to find out what's actually going on, you're going to have to find out during lunch. You're going to have to find out during break time. So like, is there, with the Yonder bags and
we are seeing a difference, absolutely, in the behavior of the students. Teachers have noticed it. Students have commented on it. Parents have commented on it. Even the ride home from school seems to be less obsessed with their phones and more communicating, because several of our students have just stopped bringing their phones to school. I'm not saying it's 100%. We have had a few cell phone violations, but the number of violations has been drastically reduced at the middle school.
I'm wondering too if there's a way to, the nice thing about the school, the Yonder bags, is that becomes a policy, right? So kids go to school, they can't take their phones they put their phones in the Yonder bag, they can't use it. I'm wondering, once they're kind of conditioned to the phone gets taken away during a portion of the day and they start accepting it, if there's a way to parlay that into parents being able to feel comfortable when their kid gets home to set limitations. I'm wondering if there's any synergy that we as parents and the school district can help inform the parents. Here's how you can take this, what we've essentially, the way that we have conditioned your kids in school, that it's okay not to have the phone. You're not going to miss much. The fear of missing out, we've kind of broken the ice on that. So here's maybe how we can, even though I feel strongly that it's not our role to parent kids, but if we can help parents segue what the school is doing into, at home, it's okay. Your child already knows that there are limitations on the phone. So I'm just kind of wondering, because that's one of the things that parents did bring up at a couple of the Board of Ed meetings is, how do we help them at home? And it's not so much, I think, our job to parent in the home, but if we can segue the two, it seems like a win.
Yeah, and I think that segues so nicely into Max's message, right? Was that we have to be confident and committed to some of that positivity that happens when you disconnect, and the reconnection opportunities when you don't have your phone. And so some of the parents at that night were talking about when they have the group of kids over to their house, they ask them to put their phones in a basket when they arrive, or they ask them to put them on a docking station that's in the kitchen, right? And focusing on not letting kids have their phones in their rooms. Focusing on making sure if there's an activity, instead of doing this, then let's do this. Let's play a game, right? Focusing on an alternate activity that really shows kids that this is actually a lot of fun to do this versus break away and go into like your own isolated world on a phone. So he gave some really good strategies around for parents, because I do think, to your point, David, we have a responsibility as parents to kind of take some ownership around some of what happens when kids are not in school, right?
Yeah, I think it would be great if, if time allowed, that maybe Dan or someone in the middle school could kind of send out something that's more district-wide, that how the Yonder bags at the school have been working out. And I don't know who that person would be, but to help set limitations at home, that it's that segue, right? That might be the helpful point for parents, because again, our kids are conditioned to not have phones in their hands during the school day. So you can feel more comfortable as a parent. Your child already knows that there's limitations. So, here are some tips. It might just be helpful, because then the community's looking for that kind of guidance.
I did put a little bit of that in my week ahead email the week before Thanksgiving, just to encourage families to be tech-free for Thanksgiving. Some of those things can be applied beyond Thanksgiving Day, but it was some of those exact tips you're talking about, not having the devices at mealtime, for example. What Max Stossel said was, we want to make sure that we're using our devices and that they're not using us. So just learning to be mindful about when we use them and what the purpose is, and only use it for that purpose, or we could be down a rabbit hole all day long on our devices.
Excellent. Maybe, I'm sure Dan's going to add some of the updates during our winter presentation to the board when we look at our school and district goals, because this is one of our district goals around climate and our action steps. So, and you'll see this when we talk about the panorama survey, but I'm hoping that some of these action steps will return a changed result in some of our data with our parent community as well. So good point. And then last, I'm going to move on to the words in motion. Last curriculum committee meeting in November, we had parent events talking about our new math curriculum in grades 2 and 5, and talking about instructional strategies focused on numeracy at the lower grades. The next series is around literacy. And so I wanted to provide you all and the community with the dates for the literacy presentations with parents and the strategies that they're going to be, the curriculum and instruction leaders will be presenting at the WIS PTO meeting, as well as the HES PTO meeting. The dime for WIS, is Patty on? I'm sorry, I can't see all the people. I think she was there, right?
Yep, I'm here.
Sorry, I forgot to put your time. Is it
Same time.
10:30?
Same
Okay.
time.
9:15 to 10:15. Okay, great. All right. So moving on, we have the next two items before I make some presentations is we're joined today by two of our curriculum and instruction leaders from social studies and English. Shauna, I'm going to start with you. Shauna Johnson is our curriculum and instruction leader for secondary social studies. She is going to be giving us an update around the Holocaust Remembrance Day events, which will happen in January. So Shauna, are you there? I can't see.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pass the mic to you, and I'll mute myself if you want to give us a brief update around some of the things that you're planning, and then we'll talk about the next project, which is around the positive psychology read alouds project that you also led.
So for the Holocaust Remembrance Day, I'm going to use the same model that Nick Torres used last year. I've contacted the same people that he also had come in and speak, but I'm also going to work with the Jewish Student Union so that we can add some different speakers to the event and kind of make it a little more comprehensive. We are trying to have a university professor come in and potentially a rabbi as well. Some students will be in the library listening to a Holocaust survivor speak, and he's come in previous years. Jennifer Klein was actually the point of contact for him. And then we'll have 2 different sessions in the auditorium. The exact times and topics we still have to flush out, but I want to make sure that I use our student representatives and really use their voices, because they did a fantastic job at the last assembly. And Lisa, I didn't know that about your father-in-law or your husband and your in-laws. So I'll probably be reaching out to you as well.
Perfect.
Here's it.
I was going to say, perfect. That's great. Is he in the background there? He's like, he's ready.
I just want to add, there's a Holocaust Center,
Resources,
resource center at the Fairfield
Federation,
Federation,
Jewish Federation.
if you wanted to reach out.
Great. I think Sean is writing it down. We're always looking to expand on our resources and partnerships so that every year students have a different and unique experience and different perspectives. So Lisa, thank you for offering up your family to come and present. That's so great. And Shauna, I know that the Holocaust Remembrance Day is a Monday, January 27th.
Yes.
Is our plan to do it on that same day, or
Yes.
is the plan? Okay, good.
Mhm.
Okay,
Because
fantastic.
last year it landed on a weekend.
Okay, I see. So this year it's on a Monday, so we'll be able to do it on the actual day. Fantastic. And typically speaking, we have exposed students in grades 6 through 12 with these events, and we are going to maintain some of that work that we've done prior, just to get some feedback or give some feedback to all of you based on last year. Nick Torres, who is the CIL, who is now the assistant principal at the high school that Shauna is replacing, he did a lot of work to make sure that the teachers prepared students for the topic and the conversation, because the instruction around the Holocaust isn't part of the 6th grade curriculum. So we wanted to make sure that they had some background knowledge and understanding prior to coming on the day of the event, and also make sure that if there were any emotional triggers from the presentation, that teachers were aware and that they knew that they had some additional resources to speak to adults in the building if they had any concerns or issues from the presenters. So it's important to be mindful of that as well. And we do that every year. Anything else to add?
I have 2 quick items. So Shauna, I'm going to forward you an email. The synagogue I belong to, our cantor who actually runs it, specifically asked me for 2 things, or she told me one thing and asked me a second thing. But one thing she said to me is that she's part of a group that has a lot of resources available to schools that are interested in a Holocaust remembrance type of day or program, and it spans all age levels. So I will forward you her contact information, and she's a wonderful person with a lot of knowledge. And then, do we have anything available, or will we be doing anything for our lower grades, for our Hurlbut and Wisc kids?
So I am in charge of the 6-12, but that's definitely a conversation that we can have. We just need to make sure that it's age appropriate, because when they're little, their comprehension of some of these larger topics can be a little more challenging. So I would have to work with my counterparts over at Hess and Wisc.
Yeah, and I think we've had this conversation before. On that specific day, right now, our focus has been 6 through 12, which is an expansion of what we've done in the past. And to Shauna's point, we will include Alex and Andrea, and maybe with your point of contact, David, that has experiences K-12, we can review that and determine whether or not we want to bring something like that down to the K-5 environment. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for
Shauna.
the contact info.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So Shauna, you're still here. Thank you for joining in. This is great. Alex Bluestein, she is here as well. She is our K-5 curriculum instruction leaders support English as well as social studies because it's part of the humanities content areas. Shauna, when we get to the high school, Shauna and those curriculum instruction leaders then become content specific. But I asked both Shauna and Alex to come today because Shauna initiated an interdisciplinary project that was new, and it had such great positive reviews that I really wanted them to celebrate what that experience was like and talk to you all about how their work as a curriculum and instruction leader and across the grade levels, how there's a lot of opportunities for our CILs to work collaboratively and make connections across grade levels as well as content areas. And Shauna actually she's a 0.5 curriculum instruction leader and a 0.5 teacher. So she actually has 3 classes that she also teaches during the day. She's very busy. And so I asked for Shauna and Alex to come together today to talk about what that project was, the overview of that project, and what the experience was like. I did also ask to see if we could bring some students in on the conversation. It didn't work for today, but moving forward, we want to try to get more students involved and kind of sharing their experiences as well. So I'm going to ask Shauna to kind of give us an overview of the project, and then she and Alex will talk about the experience.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm out sick today. I have a migraine, so I otherwise the kids would have been here because they were really excited to share. They actually wanted to share in person some of their stories that they have written. Do you mind clicking, Tina, on the slideshow? So Alex and I put together a slideshow. Is it in that folder or? Okay, can I share my?
That link goes to a different folder.
So we have a lot of pictures as well. So we wanted to be
Yeah.
able to share the pictures so you have the access to that. You shared the presentation with me. Let me just pull it up real quick. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The link is on Board Book.
Thank you. I never go to Board Book. I know that I should.
So while Tina's getting that pulled up, I'll just kind of explain. So we studied positive psychology. In our first unit in psychology, we looked at just what psych is, different methods that psychologists use. We studied what surveys are and kind of experiments and all those different things. So with positive psychology, we looked at what that is, all the different components, all the different research that is tied to it. And then my students created a survey that they then administered to the teachers at WIS. I talked to Alex and she and I worked together. So my kids actually wrote out all the questions that they wanted to know and find out based off of positive psychology. I gave the link to Alex. Alex administered it to her teachers and shared it with them. When we got our survey results, then we spent time breaking that out and kind of looking at what are some of the strengths and what are some of the challenges of kids in grades 3 through 5. And then from there, my kids looked at what is a storybook? I mean, how do we write good storybooks? What are the beginning, middles, and ends? All those literary classics and those things that the grades 3 through 5 teach the kids as they're writing stories and narratives within their classrooms. So we looked at storybooks, and you could see the two pictures that are next to each other are actually the kids reading through and jotting down some notes about the different books that I had borrowed from the library and brought in for them. And then we had Mrs. Burke come in, who is WIS's school psychologist, who spoke to them about specifically this age cohort and, again, some successes and challenges and some of the things that she sees when she works with kids. And they proposed their topics to her and she would give them feedback on it. So it was a really great exchange. And you can see a picture in the bottom right-hand corner. So from there, the kids then brainstormed their stories and then they wrote them. And they had come up with some really amazing ideas. One told me that he spent 3 hours rhyming about Bob the Blobfish and how he wasn't accepted into these different groups. And then he finds his a school of fish at the end with all these different colors and all these different types of fish. And they're like, yes, Bob, please join us. And so they just did this really amazing and incredible job with creating these stories all aligned with positive psychology. And that next slide are different quotes that the kids had written in a reflection after we did our project and after we had gone to WIS. Those are just some of the things that they had said, but they were so excited to go over, and it was really sweet to see them not only excited to read their stories, but also to just touch base with the teachers that they had in the past. And so the next few slides are pictures that I took of them while they were reading their stories. So sometimes we were in classrooms and then sometimes we were in the library, depending upon the availability of it.
Shauna, how many kids went over? Because I can see in this picture, it looks like, they did one-on-one read alouds. Was that the structure?
Yeah, for the most part. Some kids work together. A max of 2 could write their story together, but most kids wrote it on their own. So I have about 45 stories.
That's amazing. And when they read the books, talk about the schedule that day.
So we tried to do it within the class period. So class started, we walked immediately over to WIS. Alex had created a schedule based off of the teachers who had signed up and who had completed the survey. And then she brought us around to all the different classrooms on those specific days. So we went during our period 1 class and my period 7. And then we had an extra day on the 21st. So it was my period 7, and anyone who was able to join us from period 1 was invited to also go on the 21st. So we had 2 separate days and 3 different time blocks that we went over there. And there are some more pictures if you just click through.
And who illustrated the books, Shauna?
Some of the illustrations were done by the kids. Some were done by AI. Some they found Pinterest, but all of the writing was unique to them. So nobody used AI to write any of their books. They just were allowed to use AI for images, or Canva as well.
I was trying to zoom in on this girl here because that looks like a pretty amazing image there.
Yeah, yep. And the one next to it, Graydon, he did his own. And it's actually really funny because the turkey has a face, and it was all about Thanksgiving, and all of the vegetables and foods had faces on them.
The title is Feast. Is that what
Yeah.
I see? Yeah, Feast.
Yeah.
That's cute.
So they did a really nice job.
Alex, do you want to talk about some of the feedback that you got from the teachers and the students, maybe like out beyond that block of time, because they really went really quickly. Shauna, you really coordinated really well with Alex, and you were very efficient. It was in the one period that the kids had the psychology class at the high school. It was very structured and organized. And, you know, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, overall, the experience was it was fabulous, and I just want to just give a shout out to these high school students because their stories were amazing. I mean, consistently. And if any of you have ever tried to write a children's picture book, it seems like it should be easy because they're short and to the point. It's really not. It's a complex kind of writing, and these kids did amazing. All of our students were rapt with attention and they learned. So one of the things that the high school students, after reading their stories, they asked the kids, what do you think the message was? And consistently the kids knew it. Stay true to yourself. There are things you can do to, like there was a story someone wrote about reducing distractions. A lot of them were about basically finding your people. Like sometimes the people that are around you aren't your people, and that's okay, you'll find them. There were a lot about emotional intelligence. And the kids, even like we had 3rd graders, 4th graders, 5th graders, they all consistently, they got the message. And the teachers, almost every teacher and myself, we want copies of these books for the library. And my suggestion was many of these kids should submit for publication.
I did post that for them. I gave them a bunch of different links to.
There are all kinds of ways for them to do that, and it's a fabulous process to go through. Even if it doesn't end up in publication, it's a great learning process, and the stories are worthy of it. On another note, it was amazing for our students to see that the writing that they're learning to do continues, right? That they're learning to write stories with interesting characters who learn something by the end, who change and grow. And eventually this whole idea of a real world audience was really, really important for our kids to see and experience. And one of our teachers actually suggested that we do it again with social studies, because in fifth grade and 8th grade have some overlapping, not completely the same, but the same. We both teach American Revolution. And so we're starting to think through how we could maybe integrate, having, this cross interdisciplinary experience again and more often, because it was extremely successful, and just they did a fabulous job. They really did. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the eighth grade social studies makes books as well, storybooks
Mhm.
about the revolution, and they actually
Yes.
just finished it. So I've been in contact with our eighth grade team to talk about like how can we feasibly make this happen and make
Yes.
this work.
And I remember seeing a few of them last year. Nick showed me a few at the year in review, and they were amazing. They're really fabulous. And you know, when we teach writing starting in kindergarten, we try to really teach kids that you're writing for yourself as a writer, and you're writing for others. You're writing for an audience. You're writing for a purpose. And so this just sort of really reinforces that and brings it all full circle for our students.
Yeah, and I just gave the kids the structure. They are the ones who just blew it out of the water. It was so great. We talked about what this age cohort looks like developmentally.
Yes.
You know, they just did such a great job, and the kids are just so amazing. And I do plan on getting copies for the library and doing little about the author pages as
Beautiful.
well. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, no, thank you. It'll be treasured.
Well, thank you both, because the amount, like, I know you said, Shauna, you gave them the structure, but it really was a collaborative effort of the principals, of the teachers, and you know, how great it is for our students to actually make their learning authentic and visible. And to your point about purpose and relevancy, I mean, this is truly what we're trying to build that passion around for kids, around like what are we learning and why are we learning it, right? So this is one of those avenues and experiences where we actually get to explain and show kids how, you know, learning is truly interdisciplinary and can lead to something much bigger than yourselves and much bigger than these four walls. And who knows, like, as I'm looking at the pictures, we have our next famous author, we have our next fantastic teacher. You know, there's just so many ideas, just like you and Alex, Shauna and Alex, are even thinking about through these experiences, that you start thinking of new ways of really making the learning exciting and fun. So kudos to both of you for taking the lead on this. And I really appreciate the principals supporting you and really providing an avenue for you to, you know, showcase the kids and showcase the learning.
Yes.
Great job.
I thank the community as well, because they're great kids here in Weston.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Very talented, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so thank you so much, both of you. Anybody have any questions for either Shauna or Alex or Patty or Megan around the project? There's a
Sounds
lot.
like
There's a lot
a
more
great,
pictures in
successful
this.
project.
It was. Everyone was really exciting and excited. And we're talking about like school climate and culture and connections. It's not just connections with adults and kids. It's also connections between kids, right? Peer to peer. And this was a great experience for them. So thank you guys both so much. You're welcome to stay, but we're going to move on to the last two large agenda items, which are our panorama survey, community survey results, as well as an overview of the next generation accountability system. And I'm going to just pull up my screen. Give me one moment again. Okay, how does that look? Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay, can't see you because I'm in like multi-screen view here. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple slides to provide an overview of the Next Generation Accountability Report. It was released in October, November. I don't remember the exact date, but every year, the state of Connecticut provides an update regarding the accountability system for districts and for schools. This presentation focuses on the district level report, We have drilled into individual schools as well, and that's why I've asked the principals to join if there's any specific questions school related. But for the purposes of today, this is provide an overview of an understanding of what the Next Generation Accountability Report is and how it impacts or influences some of our work in the district. So in general, accountability systems serve a lot of different purposes, right? We use them to track progress, to make decisions around improvements at the district and school level. It helps us recognize areas of support or need, and it also helps us, hopefully, if the system is designed well, also helps us recognize areas of success. It provides and promotes transparency across a variety of different indicators. We hope that through some of the content, it also meets the state and federal requirements as well. So in this particular case, our accountability system in Connecticut has been evolving. It first was designed in 14-15, and with a lot of feedback from the districts and with the evolution of curriculum, it has evolved over time. What I do like about the Connecticut Next Generation Accountability System is that the philosophy or the theory around it was that we know students are more than a test score, or a school or district is more than just averages of those scores. So while it still is encompassing of achievement and growth, there is a focus around a broader set of indicators, which we'll go through today. It is an accountability system. It helps us reflect on some of those areas, as I mentioned before, of success and areas of growth. And over the years, the state has really listened to some of the needs around the calculations for districts and really tries to make adjustments to represent kind of the changes or the shifts in curriculum, whether that be AP courses, dual enrollment courses. They include arts and arts access. It includes physical fitness. It includes college and career readiness indicators that to draw an attention around a more well-rounded education system. Our Connecticut system is intended to have a greater emphasis on growth versus achievement alone, as it initially really only measured achievement. So they have now since made adjustments over the years that is focusing also on growth in the accountability system. So there's 12 indicators, and within each indicator, there's a lot of calculations under the hood on how they determine how a district and school gathers as many points as possible around these 12 indicators. If there is so the first indicator is all about academic achievement, whether that's SAT, whether that's SMART or balanced, and that is including achievement data around English, math, and science. The second indicator focuses on growth and proficiency towards English language proficiency, progress towards English language proficiency. The third indicator is around participation rates. And basically, there's a blanket requirement that participation rates are at 95% or higher. The fourth indicator, which many of you may have heard a lot about, we've been focusing a little bit on this as a district around chronic absenteeism. We know there's a direct correlation between kids coming to school and achievement. 5 and 6, those indicators focus on post-secondary readiness and preparation. Indicators 7, 8, and 9 focus on graduation requirements and graduation success. And 10 is focusing on post-secondary entrance rates. And 11 and 12 are focusing on physical fitness and arts access. If there is an H next to an indicator, it means that there exists a high needs supergroup, not a subgroup, but a supergroup. And a supergroup consists of students that are identified as having low socioeconomic status, which typically falls within the free and reduced lunch population, ELL or MLL identifier, as well as a student with disabilities. So that is students that are in that high need supergroup, you'll see when I break it down a little bit further, there is also data that's related to a high needs supergroup. Indicator 1, when we talk about academic achievement, English language learners are included in that number. And something to just be aware of is that if a student is currently identified as an ELL student, they are within that high needs indicator, but also if they've been identified formally at any point within the 4 previous years, they are still counted within that indicator, within that supergroup. So that might be something that maybe we didn't know before. A group, a subgroup has to have a minimum of 20 students in it. If it doesn't have 20 students, you'll see an asterisk. So if anybody in the public, because you can actually pull up these reports, they're publicly viewable through EdSite on the state site. But if you see an asterisk in any of the indicators, it is because there is a less than 20 students within that indicator, and therefore there's no data, or they don't count that data in the overall accountability score. And just as an FYI, enrollment or student enrollment is based on the October 1st enrollment deadline that we submit to the state. Okay, so here is what someone will see when they log into EdSite. They'll see all of these indicators from 1 to 12. You can see them broken out. Remember, while I said indicator 1 was around achievement performance, that is true, but there's a lot of sub areas underneath that one indicator. You'll see 1A is ELA performance for all students, and then 1B is ELA performance for high needs in the supergroup, right? And then it keeps going and breaks down for math and breaks down for science. When you go to indicator 2, again, it's another one of those indicators that is broken up a little bit more specifically for all students and high needs students. And in indicator 2, if there is an assessment that shows growth over time, then the growth indicator is measured. So for example, in the intermediate school or the middle school, there is growth between Smarter Balanced from 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. And so there is a growth indicator that they can use for indicator 2. But in a school like the high school, where they only take an assessment 1 year, which is 11th grade, there is no growth indicator. And so you'll see that adjusted on the individual school reports. For the purposes of today, this is a district level report. Chronic absenteeism, I know we've maybe zoomed in a little bit more on this over the years than any other indicator. The goal or the target for districts and schools is that we have less than 5% of our students that are identified as chronically absent. That's true for both all students and high needs students. And then as you go down, you'll see they look at tracking the percentage of students that are taking college and career courses and what their success rates are on exams, and if they're on track for high school graduation based on what their 9th grade coursework looks like. And then they also provide metrics around students that graduate within 4 years and within 6 years, right? And then at the bottom there, you'll see post-secondary entrance graduation rates. Physical fitness focuses on the different assessments that are provided in the health curriculum. That's the mile run, it's the sit-ups, it's the push-ups, very similar to what you may recall when we've done, I know I did the presidential fitness assessment and they got award. This is a little different now, but very similar to the different components of the physical fitness expectations. That's also, that data gets submitted to the state, and that is what contributes to indicator 11. And then 12 is arts access. It's about the number of courses that we offer to students within our program of study and how many of them actually take them. So then at the bottom, you'll see that within each one of these rows, all of these indicators have a target, and based on how many points we've earned within that specific indicator is how many points that you add up for an overall score, which gives you an accountability index, which is highlighted in yellow. So the overall district this past school year received 85.6% of the points that we could have possibly earned. We are well above the state. The state is at 70.8. And what you probably don't see here, but it's still calculated within the overall points, is indicator 3, which is about participation. So when we talk about Smarter Balance, when we talk about SAT, it is required that all students participate in those mandated assessments, and part of the indicators for the overall accountability system includes those participation rates as well. So how did we do compared to last year? So this particular slide talks about last year's individual indicators versus this year's individual indicators. And you'll see little arrows. Yellow is maintained based on last year. Green is we've increased. Red, we've declined. If any one of those numbers is beyond 1%, then that indicates whether or not it's a green arrow for going up or a red arrow for going down, right? So we've maintained our performance in both ELA and math for all students, and we've increased our individual performance for high needs students in both ELA and math. And an area specifically that we want to focus on moving forward is in science. We know that our high needs supergroup is an area that we slightly declined on, a little over 1% from last year. So we want to zoom in a little bit on curriculum. We want to talk to teachers about the data. We want to look at individual students and see if there's any instructional pieces that we can make some tweaks on within some of those areas to improve that subgroup result. Also, we've been doing a lot of work around chronic absenteeism. So you can see we've improved significantly since last year in that area. We've earned more than 90% in both of those indicators for all students and for high needs across the district. And then finally, some of the other areas that we want to be zooming in on a little bit is the 6-year graduation rate for high needs students. The law changed this past year where students with students with disabilities have a larger amount of time by age to remain in the district. And so that may result in why there was a slight decline in that area, because the state law now allows students to stay in the district for a longer period of time, which may result in longer than 6 years. So we want to drill into that a little bit more further and see if that is a result of that decline. And then finally, I was talking to Mary Faith Zangi about some of the declines to the physical fitness achievement in the district. And one of the things she was talking about was that we really need to focus on the mile run a little bit. And so there's some motivational pieces here for students to actually complete that in a timely manner. And so we're looking at actually expanding some of the opportunity to 9th grade. Right now, we could also include 9th grade mile run scores in that data, which we couldn't do in the past. So that's one of those indicators that got changed. So now we're able to submit the data for students in 9th grade as well. We used to only be able to submit it in 10th and 11th grade. Now we can actually use the mile run data for 9th, 10th, or 11th grade and actually give their best score in that data collection. So the other component of the accountability system that it provides is whether or not we have any achievement or graduation rate gaps. So how they calculate a gap in achievement or a gap in graduation rates is if the gap size is substantially different from the average of the state. So if we have a gap size between our high needs and our non-high needs groups that is larger than the state, then then there's an identifier that says yes you have a gap, or no, you don't have a gap. And that's true for graduation rates as well. So within our district, if we look as a district, I mentioned this before, we have a slight we've hit that gap rate of 1 standard deviation above the mean, which is slightly higher than the state. And so therefore we have a graduation rate gap in the 6-year graduation rate. And again, that may be a result of, because the age requirement has changed, it's been expanded. So students have a longer period of time beyond the 6 years. And so we're zooming into that a little bit more, but in every other area as a district, we do not. And then finally, each school, as I mentioned, they do break down each of those indicators by school. And so the principals are looking through some of their own accountability system and their own accountability indices, and they're working with their leadership teams to talk about some of those areas that they might want to focus on. I mentioned before, science across the district within the high needs subgroup is an area that we want to focus on, specifically in growth. And then at the high school level, and we talked a little bit about this last year, we want to look at some of our ELA and math achievement areas at the high school level. So I asked the principals to join in on the conversation at this point and answer any questions. We have a lot of strategic priorities that we've outlined for you all when we did our district improvement plan. We've had some of those components and action steps already in place, one of which is the Panorama survey. We want to look at that to help us with some action planning to build a safe school climate. And that would directly focus on anything related to chronic absenteeism. And it will also help with making sure that participation rates are high across all the schools when it comes to coming to school, and making sure that, you know, we have a high percentage of students accessing curriculum and accessing learning. We've also been working on our MTSS multi-tiered system of support. That's where we focus on intervention for math, for literacy, and for any behavioral needs in the district. And that's something that we've been focusing on K through 12. And we just had a meeting yesterday to refine some of our practices and talk about what is the flow and the structure of some of that work. We've also started working with the special education department and across special education and general education to refine or redefine and clarify what co-teaching looks like in Weston, and maybe outlining some of those roles and responsibilities when there is a general education teacher and a special education teacher in the same room, and what are some of those roles and responsibilities to maximize that time collectively across teaching and learning, and ensuring curriculum is implemented at a high level. And then moving forward, as I mentioned briefly, some of the areas that we want to talk about is specifically focusing in ELA and math with students with disabilities, focusing on differentiation and scaffolding strategies. A lot of our curriculum and instruction leaders are working through the data team process to help identify some of those strategies for teachers, and that is through our MTSS system. And I mentioned some of the work around physical fitness and those motivators for students to kind of ensure that they have success around all the different components of the physical fitness assessment. Mary Faith is really taking the lead on that. She's our curriculum and instruction leader for physical education and health. And maybe that includes smaller test group formats where they've gathered some data from students on, you know, why they're not motivated to finish the mile. Why are they not really engaged in that task, and you know, having the stamina to continue running versus taking a break and walking some of it. So that is some of the conversation she's been having around with students around maybe the delivery or the format of the assessment, and also, you know, putting the ownership on the kids and creating some goals and being more transparent around why this assessment is important to us as a district and as a school. And as always, I know the principals talk about this a lot, is focusing on continuing to reduce chronic absenteeism. It is not a, we've been doing a great job and we've been reducing our numbers, which is great. And we've earned all of our points there. But beyond absenteeism, some of the other pieces that we don't report to the state that we know we want to continue focusing on is tardiness, and being mindful of start times for when school begins or when classes begin, and how that data also relates to some of the ideas or philosophies around, being absent from education, which could potentially relate or be connected to some of the other indicators, like indicator 1 around achievement or indicator 2 around growth. So a lot of these indicators are interwoven and they relate to each other. I think our job is to figure out the root cause of some of these pieces and make explicit action steps around them and be intentional and focus, so that we can see some change in practice or change in results over time. Okay, so I'm going to stop. That was a brief overview of the accountability system, and we haven't really done all of those components yet. And so I wanted to open up the floor to Lisa and David and ask any clarifying questions. And then while the principals are here, if there's anything that you want to ask specifically to them as well.
So I think one of the most important areas is the area of growth. And so when that indicator comes in, and I know it's kind of the growth figure, are you able to drill down and see which students didn't make growth and then create, an individual education plan for those students so they can make sure that they grow because they've missed it and they missed that year. And what are the strategies that you're using to help them? I know you have a multiple tiered system. I haven't seen it, but what are some of those areas that are helping support those students?
Yeah, you're speaking our language, Lisa. So you hit the nail right on the head, right? So under the hood, we as a district have explicit data that connects all of those indicators to individual students. So the public doesn't have access to that, but we have access to that. And we look at achievement and we look at growth in all 3 of those content areas specifically. And which is exactly what you just said, our multi-tiered system of support is the avenue and the structure that we build internally, where we have our universal screeners, right? Because the problem with the accountability systems, as I see it, is that a lot of times you get the data late.
Yes.
Right? A lot of that assessment data is from the spring of last year, all of it, actually. And then how many months go by? We're planning, right? That is the intention or purpose of having a really good, high quality universal screener in the fall, the winter, and the spring. Because a lot of these accountability systems, the data is old, right? It's old, it's dead, and we can't wait for them, right? So yes, this is a snapshot. So those assessments, yes, we take this into consideration, but we don't wait for this. We have other metrics that are connected to Smarter Balanced or SAT that we use immediately to red flag any concerns that we have with students. And then we start to unpack that. We connect it to curriculum. We look at instructional strategies. And that's, as you said, all through the multi-tiered system of support and our curriculum and instruction leaders, along with our interventionists, and yes, along with our leadership from our principals. They guide that whole process from tier 1, which is classroom instruction, all students, to, when needed, tier 2, tier 3, which is more of an intervention and more focused small group, specific goal setting, individualized or personalized based on specific standards or goals.
And then you measure the growth of that system through, you use a smarter, is that a testing system?
Which one? I'm sorry.
Is it it's called Smarter?
So NWEA is our universal screeners. And then
NWA.
and then when we meet internally around students, we progress monitor those students along the way, and we have a timeline or a time frame that we measure progress and make instructional decisions based on that data. There's different interventions, there's different data depending on what the needs are of the student. And then we re-administer those universal screeners 3 times a year, so we can make sure and track if they're on track to meeting and closing those gaps. Right. between grade level and non-grade level. Yeah.
Thanks.
The SMART goals that you're talking about, that is within the MTSS system when we're identifying how are we going to be specific, measurable, how are we going to achieve our goals? Is it relevant to the standards? Is it timely? Like, that's just the acronym that we use within that structure to create an individual plan, right, for those kids or groups of kids. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, a lot of management.
It is, but it sounds like the students will make progress. And by the way, you might want to create a running club to help those students, like in the morning, so they run every day. It can
Yeah,
help.
it's so interesting because these are our athletes. So, I mean, we have a lot of athletes in Weston. And so I know this sounds like simple, but it is a motivational piece. It could be that, time of day, they're tired. So Mary Faith is really kind of unpacking some of that to see if it's really, it's not because they can't do it, right? It almost is like a choice.
Well, maybe she can ask the coaches to ensure that that's in their, playbook.
Repertoire. Yes. Yeah, good point.
Tina, I just had two quick questions. So this to me is like the district improvement plan, but it's more at the state level. So really, I think my question is, why do we care? So really the question is, how do these indicators and how the percentages and the fact that we don't want to be below, how does that affect us in Weston?
Yeah, I think, so every district this is what we're measured against, right? When it comes to accountability. There's a performance index, which is based on the different content areas. And then the accountability index is the overall, which includes all 12 indicators. We care because we need to care. We need to be aware of how every district is being measured in the state, right? We also care because it's another data point. It's another layer of guidance when we reflect on our goals within our district, and more importantly, what are our action steps that we are really being intentional about in order to change results. So it's just another metric, another data point. I think that we have been really intentional and mindful of all of these indicators and how they translate into our district and school improvement plans, right? You two, right, which have been involved in all of this work from the get-go, you should see through lines between these indicators and our district and school improvement plans, right? That they should be connected. So when we originally started our district and school improvement plans, we were really focusing a lot of our goals on achievement. We now have achievement and growth goals. That's done intentionally. We look at all students and we look at students with disabilities because that is the largest population within that super group for us, right? So I think it shows that we're on track, that we're mindful of how the state is measuring us, as well as what we value in our school and in our schools and in our district.
Okay, yeah, I figured there was the district. I think of the district improvement plan as being more catered to what the community is looking for, the educators and the administrators, and then these indicators are what the state's looking for, and of course they have to line up in some ways. Mm-hmm. My other question is, for the kind of what Lisa was saying, for the simpler things that are surprising, the physical education piece, is that just lack of participation? Because I would imagine from a fitness perspective, our students can do this, right? I mean, so do you know, is it just a lack of participation, or is it actually students that don't meet the achievement?
So yes and yes. So participation is not the problem with physical fitness, right? In order for you to earn all the points in the physical fitness assessment, you have to meet the benchmarks. And the 4 areas are like the sit and reach, the push-ups, the sit-ups, and the mile run, right? Those 4 areas. Did I say that right, Patty? It's the mile run. Yeah, you're the only one I can see. Sorry. It's the mile run. It's the sit-ups. It's the sit and reach. And I think it's either push-ups or pull-ups. Is it push-ups? Pull-ups. Yeah, I can't remember those 4. And if you don't meet the benchmarks, then you don't earn the points, right? So if we look at the 4 areas that we enter the data on, and we're truthful, we don't, we enter the data and submit it to the state based on the student's achievement in those areas. The area that has the lowest or the most growth that we can have is the mile run. And what Mary Faith was talking about, and these are some of these areas that we were talking about, like, let's modify it and see if it makes a difference. One is that a lot of times the kids start to walk. And so what happens when you walk the mile? It takes longer, like a lot longer, right? And so if the benchmark is to get a mile done in 12 minutes and you're taking 25, you didn't meet the benchmark. Not that you can't do it, but like, how do we motivate kids to like, just get it done? Just, show us what you can do. We know you can do it. So the motivation piece is something that Mary Faith is really kind of exploring with her colleagues to see how can we motivate them to just, get it done. And the other piece is smaller groups. She did mention that sometimes if the kids work in smaller groups, it's less that other kids are watching them do these activities. And so maybe there's less, I wouldn't say judgment, but like they're more comfortable not doing it in front of their whole class, right? Doing smaller groups at a time and not having all these other people watch them. That's an option. And then also looking at, trying to tell them, like, maybe they don't know that they need to get the mile done in 12 minutes, right? And so setting some of those goals, if there are students that are taking longer than 12 minutes, and how can we help reduce some of that, increase the stamina and reduce the amount of time it takes. This is the art of education, right? Not always a science. So thank you. Any of the principals want to add anything maybe I missed that is important in this specific topic? No, crickets. Okay.
I would just,
Good.
no, I mean, David, to your point, our participation rate is high, right? Like at the high school, we have a 97.2% participation rate compared with our performance rate for that indicator. I would also just add, when we talk about the MTSS framework, that's really targeted at our general education population. So that would not be students with IEP. So I just want to clarify that for folks that the work that we're doing, I'll just speak for the high school. We've had conversations about our math courses and our math sequencing. We proposed a new course this year, that Algebra 1 linear equations, that came to this committee to really focus in and hone in on Algebra 1 skills, so that students have those foundational skills as they progress through the math sequences. We also had conversations last year, and we'll do it again with the rising ninth graders. We did not offer that accelerated algebra geometry class, and we're looking for other ways that students can accelerate through geometry, whether it's over a summer course or, concurrently enrolling, just so that we're not racing through that foundational math knowledge to support our performance, especially for our high needs students in their overall math indicator. So those are the moves that we're doing kind of curricularly, instructionally, and through our program of studies work to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all students. And in particular, we can recognize, like I'll speak for the high school, we recognize that we have an achievement gap in ELA and math, right? We do not have an achievement gap in terms of our graduation rates and all that, but so I think that it helps to inform some of those moves that we make from year to year about how we're addressing the needs of our kids.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else want to add, Patty?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to, I think, David, you were asking, like, who matters, or what does it matter, or what So and so while that they look at just a holistic score, we delve way further than that, you know, and we get that data. We really look at every single child and every cohort, every group that they were in, and really look at, you know, there's lots of variables, right? It's a one-shot test, or, you know, or whatever. They sit and they take the test. It could be lots of different things that can affect that test result. So we really want to make sure that when we look at kids, we're looking at lots of different things, and we're looking at it holistically as well. So I mean, I certainly am proud of our scores this year, but it doesn't mean that we step back and say, okay, we're done. You know, we want to make sure that we're really looking at what we can do to continually help kids grow.
You know, and can I add to that? Because I'm going to plant a seed here, and it's going to probably open a big can of worms, but we need to do it. Internally, we've been talking a lot about test fatigue, especially in the spring. The spring time frame and the window for testing across the district, and maybe Laura is a little less, but it's still a lot. But when you get to the intermediate school with the state mandated assessments and 11th grade, it is a lot. And we try to cram it all in a very short period of time. And we have had countless conversations about when to do this one and when to do that one, and give kids a break here. And, you know, we have now, and still balancing the expectations of the district, right? Because David, as you talked about, you know, our district and our school improvement plans, yes, we want to see that fall to spring, you know, metric, and we want to see that growth from fall to spring. Yes, we do, because we're just so excited, because we typically always have a lot of great success across the content areas. But the reality is, it's at the whim of our kids having to do the assessments, right? And so I just want to like lay it out there that we internally are trying to think strategically about how do we balance the needs of the district accountability and metrics with the reality of the state mandates and the reality of the time frame that we have, that we're confined around, and the fatigue and the stamina for the kids. We've maintained what we have because there's not a great answer. Something has to give.
Yeah, and just to clarify why does it matter? It was more of like, why does it matter? Like, where is this data used? It wasn't like, why are we going through this exercise? It's more, you know, what's the accountability? Who we account? Why does this matter? Maybe it's an apostrophe or question marks in the wrong place.
Well, no, it was a great opportunity and comment, because we asked the same question. What's the purpose? What are we testing just to test? Like, what is the value of the data and what is it telling us, right? So I think our accountability system in Connecticut, I value it because the goal is to have a holistic approach, which I appreciate, but it's sometimes not as easy to define or create because there's a lot of other, you know, parameters and issues within them. But so thank you for that. I just wanted to throw it out there that, you know, we are constantly having conversations around the balance of assessment and the time frame. So any other questions on this topic? We can come back to it. If something else comes up, we can always circle back to some of these topics. So I'm going to ask a question. It is 10:59. We have the Panorama survey results, which is on the family and community survey results. The full presentation is in the board book. And I want to be able to kind of speak to all the new survey, which we just gave in September, October, and go through the individual questions. We can do it, or we can hold it off and put it onto the next agenda item. But I lean on Lisa and David to tell if you want to keep going, or because it's going to go over the 11 o'clock time, and I don't know if the principals can stay. I know they can't. So.
Tina, I think it's for David. For me, it's up to Tina, because running the school is much more important than anything else. I did have some questions.
Okay, good.
I can give you a highlight, so when you go through it next time, it's basically the next steps. You know, so what are we doing about family engagement? And the other, it was an I wonder question, which is, yes, it's a Likert survey. why did you use 5? What, you don't use an odd number because you go to the middle. Why did they do that? Just that,
Yeah.
that's my only,
Okay, so then I'm going to make the executive decision because I would like the principals to be involved in that next steps conversation. And I want to be able to give enough time to that, some of your questions on the statistical validity of the questions, which we all have questions too, because we're not statisticians and we don't, design surveys for a living, but this company does, and there are answers to your questions, same ones that we had. So I'm going to put this on the next agenda, but people have the data. So you're welcome to look at it a little bit further. I gave you all of the assessment questions. I gave you every survey question that was given. So it's quite intense. So I'd like to be able to make sure we have enough time to go through it without being rushed. So I'm going to put that on hold. And just the last piece before we end, the good of the order at the end there, I just wanted to make sure that I gave Liz Morris some of the time because she wanted me to highlight some of the great December music festivals and concert events that are happening, and they kick off today. At the high school is the high school concert band tonight at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow, to put it on your calendars, multiple groups are performing at the town tree lighting. That starts at 5:30, so don't forget about that. And then next week we have middle school band, and which is at the high school at 7, which is on Tuesday. Wednesday, the chorus at WIS, right, Patty, is at the senior center at 11. That's what she said, senior center at 11.
Yep.
I'm kind of giving this to David and Lisa in case they want to show up to any of these events. High school orchestra and choirs will be at the high school on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And then, yes, Megan, did you do, yeah. Thursday, the 12th, middle school orchestra is going to be at 7 o'clock at the high school. And then rounding out December, that last week on the 17th, middle school chorus, 7 o'clock at the high school, which is a Tuesday. And then finally, Wednesday, the 18th, high school jazz night in the high school cafeteria, 7 o'clock. So we're in the thick of the holiday spirit. We want to make sure that you are aware of some of these events. They're on the calendars. The calendars are posted on the district website, but there is an event every week until the holiday. And if you're looking to get some really wonderful festive music, get out there. All right. Yes, absolutely. I'm done.
Okay, well, then there's no other new business. I thank everyone for staying late. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All
I
right.
move to adjourn.
All right. So moved. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.